again, everybody, and welcome to a series I don't have a name for just yet. But like I have said quite a few times before, I am currently fighting to get the number of subscribers necessary and the amount of watch time necessary to keep my channel as a YouTube partner and to be able to keep the money that I've earned thus far creating the over 700 videos that I've created on this channel and probably another couple dozen for other channels. So with that being said, I have something new I want to try. The last couple posts that I've made have been really, I don't want to say negative, but they have been very much serious. Very serious pie, very, very heavy stuff. And I wanted to do something a little bit more lighthearted. So because of that, and because I have seen other channels doing some stuff similar to this, but I just don't think they've been doing it quite the way I think it should be done. I'm going to start up a new series, which I have a series on here called Critting Your Role, an actor's guide to role playing, and that is literally the role playing aspect of D&D, which is really downplayed quite often with a lot of different people. They think of D&D as a mechanics, as a game instead of a storytelling tool. And so Critting Your Role is all about, role-playing and stuff like that. This is not going to be that. This series, which again I don't have a name for just yet, is going to be me basically explaining how to play these classes well. From a purely mechanical standpoint, kind of describing the basics of the class, how some of the more advanced uses of the class, stuff like that I have learned not only from being a player since the playtest. I've been playing D&D 5th edition since the playtest, and I've also been I've been DMing games since the playtest as well. I've also not only have I been doing it a long time, I have a lot of games under my belt because I used to do the convention scene a lot. I used to go to various conventions, and all I would do is go to these conventions to run D&D games and then play when I wasn't running. Like that's all I did for like 3 and 4 day conventions. I used to be part of the volunteer staff of one of the conventions, and where I live in Wisconsin, because this is where D&D started. Gary Gygax was from Lake Geneva, which is in southern Wisconsin. It's just barely over the border from Illinois. We have actually quite a few conventions here that are board gaming conventions. Like without having to leave the state of Wisconsin, I can probably go to, I think, 6 or 7 board gaming conventions that have a large D&D Adventurers League presence. And if I'm willing to, drive a couple of hours down to Illinois, that adds on another half dozen, I think. Spread throughout the year. And then, if I'm willing to go all the way to Indiana, which is only about an 8 to 10 hour trip driving, then you have Gen Con, and there's quite a few other things like that. So I live in a particularly good place for board gaming conventions, and so I used to go to a lot of them. The Cold Iron conventions that are run by Greg Marks, who's one of the admins for the D&D Adventure League, are always fun, and they're always they're very small conventions, very intimate conventions, but they're always a ton of fun. And Nexus Game Fair is a convention I used to help run. as a volunteer, and they're a phenomenal group. And there's been tons of them that I've done. So because of that, I have a lot of experience with every single class. Because either I've played that class myself, I've played, I think I have a character for every class except I don't have a fighter yet, I don't have a sorcerer yet, and I don't have a druid yet. I think those are the only three classes I do not have an actual official D&D Adventure League character for. Oh, rogue. Rogue is the other one I don't have. But because I DM so much for the Adventure League, and you get just such a wide range of people playing, I know these classes really well because I've had to adjudicate, rules and stuff like that, in the middle of the game, and I've had to read spells and decide whether or not I could allow them to use them in certain ways. So I'm very, very knowledgeable about this, and a lot of people feel a little bit overwhelmed when they look at D&D. If you look just at the player's handbook, this is the player's handbook. This is actually my second player's handbook. My first one, the first printing of the player's handbook, they had an issue with the binding, and Wizards was kind enough to replace my player's handbook for me free of charge because they're awesome. But it is let's see, what is this? 300 some odd page book, I think. I need to see. Yeah, about 315, 320 page book. And there's a lot of words in it, and it gets very, very technical, and there's a very large errata document that fixes some of the problems of wording and stuff in here. So a lot of people get confused on how to play certain classes, and a lot of people will get confused with the idea of, this class is underpowered or this class is overpowered and things like that. And a lot of that just comes from not understanding the class, how it was designed to work, and the things that you really need to be focused on. So that's what this series is going to be, is me. I'm going to take a class from the player's handbook. I'm just going to talk about the stuff in the player's handbook right now. If this becomes popular, I might branch off into the supplementary materials. Like I've got the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. I've got Xanathar's Guide. I've got Volo's Guide, all that stuff. Like I get all the books that I can. So anyway, the first class that I want to talk about, normally I would start from the beginning. I would go, Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, and just go through the book. However, I want to start off with the classes that I personally consider the most difficult for new players to play, because they take a better understanding of the rules themselves or action economy, stuff that your regular player or your new player are not really going to focus too much on. Simply because, again, these are some of my favorite classes to play. I think they're some of the most interesting classes to play. But because they are a little bit more complicated and they do require a little bit better understanding of not just the rules, but how they were intended to play. Because if you try to use them in a way they weren't intended, they feel really underpowered compared to the other classes. So I'm going to start with those, and I'm actually going to start with my favorite class. And this has been my favorite class since probably second or third edition, despite the fact that the class is so much better in fifth edition than it was in second or third, and fourth edition it was just super weird. But the monk, my highest level character in the Adventure League is a monk. It's a character I've played the most. I've been playing that particular character for 3.5 years. I've been playing the same character for 3.5 years off and on, because in the Adventure League you can kind of jump and play a bunch of different characters. Like I said, I've got tons, like 8, I think. Yeah, 8 or 9. I have 8 or 9 different characters that I play in the Adventure League, depending on what the party needs and what level range it is. But my monk is was my first character in the Adventure League. And he's still my favorite, and I just love monks in general. So that's what we're going to start with, is the monk. And I'm going to actually open up to, I think that's fighter. No, that's paladin. Monk comes before Paladin. Spelling is hard. There we go. All right. So we're going to start with some Monk. Now, as far as role-playing a Monk, Monks are really, really cool. And there's a lot of different ways you can kind of role-play them. I chose a pretty unique way to play my Monk in that my Monk is an assassin for hire. He has a criminal background. He's way of the shadow monk, so he's an assassin for hire. He's a ninja basically, and because of that, he's really, really fun to play. He can do a lot of really, really cool things, but you really have to understand for monks specifically action economy, which if you don't know what that means, action economy is basically in 5th edition. You have 4 kinds of actions you can take. You have what's called your move action, which should be fairly self-explanatory. It's how you move. You have what's called just your action, which is how you attack, cast spells. Like the majority of the things that most classes do involve using their action. And then you also have what's called a bonus action, which is generally, for other classes, is generally reserved for some sort of either an offhand attack if you're a dual wielder, or some sort of kind of buff or, extra thing that you just want to add on. But they're really not that important. 1 extra attack, or maybe tossing out a healing word, or marking somebody. That's what most classes use their bonus action for. And then you have the one action, or the one thing that you can do not on your turn, which is called your reaction. And again, for most classes, the only thing they use the reaction for is to make opportunity attacks, which is basically if a monster moves outside your attack range, you can just bop them for free. The monk is very, very heavily focused on using their reaction and their bonus action. They have to understand what's called action economy, which is the relationship between the different actions themselves, how many total actions your team is going to get versus the enemy team, and really being able to control who gets to take actions and who doesn't. The monk is a very control-focused class as far as 5e is concerned. And it's one of the reasons I enjoy playing it so much. So that's action economy, is just understanding, how many actions and how many different things different players can do, because all of those are going to affect how you play your monk. And your subclass is going to affect how you play your monk as well, because a lot of what the monk does is not directly beneficial for only them. A lot of the things that the monk does is designed to help out the whole team. They're really good for kind of a support class, and they're also remarkably good at surviving a lot of different things as they get to higher levels. So again, someone that's playing a monk has to not only understand what's happening with them, they have to understand what's happening with the rest of their party. They have to understand the monsters that they're attacking so that they can better coordinate what they want to do. So first things first, monks don't wear armor. You can theoretically train them to wear armor by taking talents and things like that. It's not worth it, because there isn't really an armor that's going to give them better than unarmed defense, which I'll talk about in a second. They have limited use of weapons because their main thing is that they do what's called unarmed strikes, and their unarmed strikes get more and more powerful as you go. At first level, they're only a D4, of damage, plus your Dex mod or Strength mod, whichever you want to use. But by the time you get to level 17, they are a D10, and you can make 4 attacks per round, burning a key point. Key points we'll talk about in a second here. So they get really, really powerful. Basically, a D10 is the equivalent of a two-handed weapon, or a versatile weapon, like a long sword. If you use it two-handed, you'll do a D10 of damage. So with monks, by level 17, it's basically like they have a two-handed longsword that they can swing 4 times per turn. And the only thing they have to do that is burn a single key point. So their unarmed strikes are a huge part of the class itself, and kind of defines what they do. Not only that, their bonus action, in order to do a lot of their bonus action type stuff, they have to have a free hand, so that they can do unarmed strikes, which can also be kicks and knees and stuff like that. And a lot of the other things that they do, like catching arrows and stuff like that, they have to have a free hand. So you'll never really ever see monks dual wielding, because it's simply it's not worth it for them. However, they do have a special thing in here called martial arts, which is a first level feature. We'll get to it in just a second, but it expands a little bit what they can do at lower levels, and it lets them use magic items and things like that a little bit. But the first thing they have is what's called unarmored defense. It basically means when you're not wearing armor, your AC is 10 plus your Dex mod plus your Wiz mod. Normally in 5th edition, your armor class, your AC, is it starts at 10, and then you add your dexterity modifier to that, and you add any bonuses to your armor. And depending on the armor you're wearing, it may limit how many points of your dex modifier you can add to it. Like heavy armor in general, you can't add any dex mod. The medium armors, they'll limit it to like, 2... a maximum of +2, and then when you get to light armor and stuff like that, there is no maximum. It's just however high your dex mod is, all the way up to 20, which is the cap for dexterity. Which the modifier is capped at 5. So if you have 20 dexterity, you have a maximum of a +5 modifier. With unarmored defense, you add your dex mod and your wisdom mod together, and then add 10 to that. So if you start off building your character relatively well, where you have 2 16s, 1 16 in dexterity and 1 16 in wisdom, you start off with an armor class of 16, and then it just gets higher and higher and higher as you get more dexterity and as you get more wisdom. Both of those stats are extremely useful for the monk and all the other things that they do. So that's unarmored defense. That's why they don't wear armor, and it's not really worth it to give them armor. Then you have martial arts, and like I said, that's all about punching and stuff. It lets you, whenever you make an attack, that's either using your unarmed strikes or using what's called a monk weapon, which is any simple melee weapon without the two-handed, or, let's look again. Monk weapons, which are short swords, and any simple melee weapons that don't have the two-handed or heavy property. So, yeah, basically a bunch of one-handed and versatile simple weapons and short swords. If you make an attack with any of these weapons, even if you're using like a staff, which is really common for low-level monks, is they will get a quarterstaff, which one-handed is a D6, but two-handed is a D8. You can use it two-handed because holding a two-handed weapon actually means you still have a hand free, because unless you're attacking with it, you don't actually always have to have two hands on the weapon. So what a lot of low-level monks will do is they'll take a quarterstaff for their monk weapon, and they'll use it two-handed to make their attack action. And then if you make an attack action with a monk weapon or unarmed strike, you can make an unarmed attack as a bonus action. So they basically get the ability to dual wield without needing two weapons. So that's what martial arts does. And it also turns your unarmed strikes into kind of similar to a finesse weapon. You can use your dexterity modifier instead of strength to make attacks with them. They are not finesse weapons. They make that very clear so that you don't have kind of the overlap with like rogue sneak attacks or other things that require finesse weapons. But that's martial arts and unarmed defense, which is your first level monk is just unarmed defense and martial arts. And they're not really that different from other melee fighting classes at level 1. Level 2 is where things start getting interesting because they get key points. Key points, you have the same number of key points as your monk level. So second level monk has 2 key points, 16th level monk has 16 key points, and these are the things that make monks awesome. When you start out, there's only 3 things you can use your key points to do. At level 2, when you first get your key, you have 3 things you can do. You have what's called Flurry of Blows, which means that bonus action punch you can do or kick, that unarmed strike. You can now do 2 of those instead of 1. So at level 2, a monk can attack 3 times by burning a key point. That is the most number of attacks any character can make at level 2. And they actually can make more attacks than most other characters all the way up until fighters get their 4th attack. So they're really good at doing a lot of attacks really quickly, but they don't do like tons of damage, unlike fighters or rangers where they're adding all these other things onto the attacks and things like that. So you have Flurry of Blows, you have what's called Patient Defense, which also uses your bonus action. So if you decide to use this, you can't make your unarmed strike. This is where the action economy comes in. You have to understand that your bonus action can be used for so many different things, and you have to choose what's going to be best for you. And for a long time, I underestimated the value of Patient Defense, and I ended up watching my monk get knocked out over and over and over again. What Patient Defense is you burn a key point and you can use your bonus action to take what's called the dodge action, which basically means anyone that tries to hit you with any kind of attack roll, they have disadvantage on that attack because you've basically, prepared yourself to take a hit. This is unbelievably invaluable at really any level because imposing disadvantage on bad guys trying to hit you at low levels means they're probably just going to miss you because they have really low attack modifiers and things like that, and your AC is already going to be relatively decent for a low level, like 16, 17, 18 AC in the first and second tier is actually pretty decent. So Patient Defense can be an absolute lifesaver anytime you do it. If you're the kind of monk like I was, where I would run into the middle of battle, Patient Defense has saved me so many times. And it was also a great way to work on that action economy. If you run into the middle of battle and you convince a bunch of people to attack you because you are the closest person that they can attack and you have Patient Defense on, you are now influencing the action economy of the entire fight because you are taking actions away from bad guys because they're wasting them rolling disadvantage against you. And if you have a bunch of like archers or something or crossbowmen at the other side of the field and you run up to them, punch one of them and then Patient Defense, because you're standing right next to them, they're going to have disadvantage on any ranged attacks they make. So they're probably going to switch over to melee weapons and try to attack you still with disadvantage because they don't really have much of a choice in the matter. And you have just saved all of your friends from getting pelted from far away by crossbow bolts or arrows or things like that. And that's how the monk works. They want to be very aware of, okay, what kind of things can the enemies do? What kind of things are they going to be doing to my team that I can influence somehow? And Patient Defense is the first thing. You get it right at level 2 that really starts affecting action economy. The last thing you have is Step of the Wind, which lets you take the disengage or dash action as a bonus action, and your jump distance is doubled for that turn. So that's basically mobility. The other thing that monks are really good at is they move like crazy. As you get higher levels as a monk, you get increases to your base speed, where I think at like 17 or 18, you have a base speed of plus 30. So for most characters, you have a base speed of 60. When you combine that with being able to use a bonus action to dash, in a single turn, you can move 120 feet and then still make 2 attacks by just burning a single key point. And the disengage action, that basically means if you do run into a big group of people to kind of draw their attacks, realize you're in a really bad position, you can disengage as your bonus action, run away, but you'll still have the ability to use your action to attack, to use your action to, maybe you have to go over and force feed somebody a potion to get them back into the fight, whatever. That ability to disengage as a bonus action, really, really useful, or just crazy amounts of movement speed. But all of these are based on your bonus action. So understanding that, well, if I take if I take Step of the Wind, I can't do Flurry of Blows, or my extra unarmed strike. Or if I take Patient Defense, I'm not going to be able to do Step of the Wind. That's where this understanding of action economy comes in. You really have to look at the battlefield, look at your character, look at the rest of the team, figure out, okay, what is it that is going to be best for the whole team this turn. Starting second level, you get Unarmored Movement. That's that thing I was talking about where you get faster and faster and faster. And monks are just crap tons of fun to play in big, wide open environments because the DM generally will spread out the bad guys so they don't get in what's called fireball formation, which is where they all group together and then you just throw fireballs at them and kill them all. They'll spread them out pretty far, but when you can run 60 feet in a round, you can get attacks, on 3 or 4 different guys by just running between them. And it's super, super fun and useful. Third level, you get to choose what's called a monastic tradition. That's the subclass. We'll talk about those later. Third level, you also get this it's one of my favorite things about the monk, which is the ability is called Deflect Missiles. This uses your reaction. Again, action economy. This is one of the things you can use your reaction for. So Deflect Missiles basically means if somebody shoots you with something, let's say, an archer takes a shot at you. When they attack, you can reduce the amount of damage that they do by 1d10 plus your dexterity modifier. Again, dex mod, really, really useful for monks. Plus your monk level. So if I'm like a 5th level monk and I've got just a pretty simple 16 dexterity modifier, I haven't increased it at all. So I have a 16 dexterity modifier. I'm a level 5 monk and I roll a 5 on the d10. That would mean I reduce if you have a 16 dexterity score, the modifier is plus 3. So that would mean I would reduce the damage of an arrow coming at me by 13 points. Meaning if they shot me and they did less than 13 damage, nothing happens. I catch the arrow, which is cool. It's a really, really cool thing. It's a great way to really annoy those long-range archers and things like that, because they'll shoot things or they'll throw things at you and you can just catch them. And the other thing that's interesting is if you reduce it to 0, you catch the missile, and you can burn a key point to throw it back at them. So on on someone else's turn, you can actually make a ranged attack against them if they decided to shoot at you. It's a really useful feature. It doesn't make you immune to ranged attacks because, again, it only works if it's a missile of some sort. So if they're firing, fireballs or, firebolts or something like that, it's not going to help. But any bows, arrows, javelins, anything like that, you can catch it. You can throw it back at them by burning a key point, and it does the same damage that your monk dice does. So it gets more and more powerful the more you level up. So again, it's a great way to kind of annoy the bad guys and make them so that they don't attack you by range, meaning they're going to send a lot of melee guys against you, which again gives you the ability to use patient defense or a bunch of other things. Again, it's a way to control the action economy, and it's a way to influence things for your team. So that's level 3. We have not even gotten into tier 2 content. We already have quite a few ways to really manipulate the battlefield from a mechanical standpoint. 4, you get ability score improvement or a feat. We'll talk about feats in another video. Also at 4th level, you get what's called slow fall. This is another reaction ability. And it's the other thing that's really fun about being a monk. It's basically... if you fall, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage you take by an amount equal to 5 times your monk level. So that basically means if you're in a situation where bad guys are pushing people off of cliffs or other things like that, or you're on the 3rd floor of a building and you have people shooting up at you from the bottom, you can just jump out the window and be perfectly fine and not take any damage because you just kind of land softly and then keep on going. It's again, it's a really good thing for mobility. It's a really good thing if you want to really have fun. If you grapple a bad guy and then jump off a cliff or something with them, you can let them go while they're falling. They will take falling damage. You will not. And you've not only have you taken that person out of the fight because you've put them in a situation that they can't get back into the fight very easily. You might kill them with the fall damage, and you're none the worse for wear because you get to reduce fall damage. But again, it takes your reaction. So if you do that, that means on that turn, you're not going to be able to catch a missile. So, yeah. Again, another really kind of unique thing that, again, looking at action economy can really change the tide of battle by letting you be able to do things that other characters can't, letting you get places that other characters can't. 5th level, you get 2 things that are massively useful. First, you get extra attack. So when you take the attack action, you attack twice instead of once. Super useful. Now, with Flurry of Blows, you can make 4 attacks per round by burning a key point, or without Flurry of Blows, you can make 3 attacks per round. Again, at level 5, you are the character that can make more attacks than any other character class. And that synergizes super, super well with the other 5th level ability, which is Stunning Strike. Stunning Strike is the monk's bread and butter. It doesn't matter which monk archetype you are, you will be using Stunning Strike. What it is anytime you hit somebody with a melee attack using your fist or a monk weapon, you can burn a key point after you hit, so you don't have to make this choice before. After you hit, you can burn a key point and they have to make a Constitution saving throw against your wisdom save DC. So your save DC is based on your wisdom score. The other thing that adds into your unarmored defense, you have dexterity and wisdom. That's where wisdom comes in. And that's actually one of the reasons why my wisdom score on my monk is higher than my dexterity score, because making this save as high as possible is really important. And the reason why is with Stunning Strike, if they fail the save, they are stunned until the end of your next turn. What stunned means is they are incapacitated. They can't take any actions. They can't do anything. All attacks against them have advantage. The only thing that you don't get with stunned that you would get with something like paralyzed is if they were paralyzed, any melee attacks made within 5 feet would be auto crits. Whereas with Stunning Strike, you don't get that. But still, you have the advantage and all that. I have broken combat encounters using this, and I have made DMs cry using this. Because what I would do is, the beginning of the fight, I would go, okay, who is the baddest looking guy? Who is the guy we do not want doing something? And they'd be, okay, that one, the mage that's going to hurl a fireball at us, or the really, really big tough guy who's going to just swipe at us and kill people one by one. I would go over to that person and I would stun them. And the cool thing about it is at 5th level, you have 4 attacks per turn. Every time you hit, you can burn a key point until you run out of them to make them make that save. So if you punch them once, you use Stunning Strike and they save, you punch them again and you keep punching them until they fail. Now, that burns through your key points like crazy. So at low levels, again, you have to watch your key points. You get them back on a short rest, but even that is, whether or not you can spend an hour to get your key points back is going to be depending on your campaign and everything. But that is an incredibly useful thing, again, for action economy. When you take a bad guy out of the fight, especially one with like legendary actions and things like that, you change the action economy massively. In 5th edition, whichever side has more actions at their disposal has an automatic advantage in the fight. That's how 5th edition was balanced. That's why legendary actions exist for tougher monsters and things like that. It's so that they can balance out the action economy of having one really big tough monster against 5 or 6 players. The action economy, the players would have such a large advantage over the singular monster that they would always win and there'd be no way to challenge them. That's why legendary actions are important. And that's why Stunning Strike is your bread and butter. Because when they're stunned until the end of your next turn. And they can't take legendary actions, they can't take reactions, they automatically fail dexterity saves and strength saves. So a lot of the really powerful wizard spells and sorcerer spells and stuff like that require dex saves to avoid damage or to reduce damage. They're going to auto-fail. They're going to take full damage from that no matter what. So they can't stop that. So that's why that is such an important move, and it's something that you have to learn pretty quickly. That you need to be able to know when to use them and when to save them for a more difficult fight. So that's the other thing you have to watch is your key points. As you get to higher levels, once you get to tier 3 where you have like 11, 12 key points, Stunning Strike becomes much more common. Because the likelihood of you burning through all your key points before you get a chance to take a short rest is pretty low. So you start Stunning Striking all the time, and you really make a massive change to how the bad guys can fight. And it sometimes makes you a target, which is where patient defense and other things come in. So again, you have to really understand how all your different moves and everything work together. 6th level, you get what's called Key Empowered Strikes. All of your unarmed attacks are magic now. So that means you no longer have to worry about going up against things like lycanthropes who are immune to damage from non-silvered weapons or non-magical weapons. Any creature that has a damage resistance is going to be resistant to non-magical damage almost every single time. So you no longer have to worry about that. You can just punch people to your heart's content, where other players have to get a magic weapon in order to do that. So that's a really useful thing. The other thing I forgot to mention about Stunning Strike, there are like 4 monsters in the monster manual total that have any sort of immunity to stunning. Most monsters are not immune to stun. If they're immune to everything else, they will not be immune to stun. The only things that are immune to stun are basically objects, like traps and stuff like that are immune to stun. But as far as monsters in that, vampires aren't immune to stun, dragons aren't immune to stun, that's why it's so useful. Unlike other things where, there'll be a lot of monsters that are immune to charm effects. There's a lot of monsters that are immune to being knocked prone or being paralyzed or all these other things. They're not immune to being stunned. That's why it's the bread and butter thing, and that's why it's something that really only monks can do, and there's a single magic weapon that allows you to stun basically just like a monk, called a Staff of Striking. And that's it. because it's supposed to be a very monk thing that they do, this stunning strike. And again, it changes battles massively. At seventh level, you get Evasion. This is the same thing that rogues get. I think they might get a little bit earlier. But it basically means on dex saves, like for fireballs and stuff like that, instead of taking half damage if you make the dex save, you take no damage. And if you fail the save, you take half damage instead of taking full damage. So that's where monks start becoming those really hard to kill characters, kind of like rogues, where it's like fireballs are flying at the party, and you're just like, oh, dex save? Oh, I'm fine. I already have a really high dex save because you're trained in it as a monk, and dex is what adds to your AC and your attack rolls, so you already have a decent dex, and then, yeah, you're doing amazing things with that. The other thing you get at 7th level is another thing that makes you really, really annoying to things like vampires and mind flayers and stuff like that, is you get what's called Stillness of Mind, which basically means you can use your action to end one effect on yourself that is causing you to be charmed or frightened. Charmed messes up fights, because again, it messes with the action economy, and it's something that I use a lot against parties that are getting a little bit too cocky. Mind control or charm the barbarian, who generally will not have a very high like wisdom or charisma score, depending on the spell that you're using, and then get them to attack the other party members. It's a whole new ball game. It really, really is. So, yes, the ability to remove charmed or frightened status on you just by using your action, super, super useful. But again, that takes your action, which changes all the other things that you can do. So you have to focus on that. By 10th level, you get what's called Purity of Body. You're immune to poison. You can't be poisoned. You don't get... you can't be infected by diseases, and any poison damage is negated. You don't take poison damage. At higher levels, you start getting bad guys like Medusas, that part of their really heavy hits is that they do like 46 poison damage. Or green dragons, their dragon breath is poison damage. Monks are completely immune to that. They don't have to worry about it at all. They can't get poison. They can't get any kind of disease. So lycanthropy, they're immune to all that stuff. It makes them, again, really, really good characters to kind of just run into the fray and start doing all their crazy monk stuff. The 13th level thing is very much a role-playing feature, which is Tongue of the Sun and Moon. You can talk to anybody. You understand all languages, and you can speak all languages. You can't read all languages, but you can speak and understand any spoken language. So that just becomes super, super fun, especially if you get captured or something, or the bad guys are trying to plan something they don't want you knowing. You understand them always. And anyone can understand you. So you can talk to anybody, which again, if you're playing the game and you want to be much more diplomatic, that means, you never have a language barrier. And it's super, super useful. At 14th level, you get what's called Diamond Soul. You have proficiency in all saving throws, which means you add your proficiency bonus to every single saving throw. Again, this makes monks super, super hard to hit with spells in general, because most spells either require an attack roll, which they can avoid using patient defense, or a saving throw, which they now have. Proficiency in all of them, so they have really high saving throws for everything. The other thing it lets you do is if you miss a saving throw, you can burn a key point and re-roll it. So you get an extra chance on every single saving throw that you roll, which, again, is massively useful. It makes them very, very difficult to kill off with magic, unlike other classes where, you might have certain saving throws that you're going to do poorly at. Monks don't by 4th level. That's what makes them so powerful. So again, they can run right up to the wizard and not have to worry about a cone of cold destroying them because it's a constitution save. They'll be fine. They won't take 0 damage like they would from a fireball, but they're still going to be taking half damage and being able to re-roll saving throws and stuff like that. So very, very useful. The 15th level one is Timeless Body, which just means you can't be magically aged. There's like one spell that does that, and then the Wish spell that can do that. So again, it's one of those other things that's more role-playing focused than anything else. 18th level, you get probably the most useful skill that you're going to get in the entire thing, which is Timeless or Empty Body, which you can burn. You spend an action to burn 4 key points. That's the most key points you will probably ever spend as a monk. And you become invisible for a minute. This invisibility isn't canceled like lesser invisibility by making attacks or anything. You are just invisible for a minute. And you're also resistance to all damage but force damage. So again, this makes monks super, super hardy. They really can't, they take half damage from all this stuff. They have proficiency in all their saving throws. As they get to high levels, they get very, very hard to kill. And then when you add in invisibility, you now, unless a creature has true sight or something like that, which a lot of higher level creatures do, you are now getting advantage on all your attacks because they can't see you. You're able to run around and do all these things that you normally couldn't just by burning a bunch of key points. You have the equivalent of greater invisibility plus resistance to everything except force damage. It's massively useful, massively cool, makes you a powerhouse on there. And then Perfect Self is their 20th level ability. And that is, if you roll initiative and you don't have any key points, you get 4 key points back. And again, that brings it back to the idea of either you can use that empty body and for a minute, which is 10 rounds, you're invisible, resistance all damage, advantage in all your attack rolls. If you want to do that, or it gives you extra stunning strikes or extra flurry of blows or extra patient defense or, all these other things. You have a wellspring of key. And at 20th level, you also have 20 key points normally. So you really have the ability to just unload your key points over and over and over again. And you really can change things. Now, because this is such a long video, I'm not going to go into the monastic traditions, the subclasses. I will probably do that in my next video. But to just go back over the points that we kind of covered here, monks are based on the idea of understanding the action economy, like from a mechanical standpoint. They're based around the idea of understanding action economy and making choices about what is the best way to not only use your actions, but to enhance your party's actions and reduce the enemy's actions. You can do that in a number of different ways. Patient defense is a great way to make the opponent waste actions attacking you. Stunning strike is a great way to just remove actions and legendary actions from combat completely for a turn. And because it doesn't end until the end of your next turn, you can stun lock a bad guy for 3, 4, 5, 6 turns while the rest of your party cleans up the minions in that, and the bad guy can't do anything. Even with creatures with legendary resistance, with Stunning Strike, you can go up to like a dragon, punch it, it fails its con save, so it uses legendary resistance to make it. You have 4 attacks. Each one of them can be a Stunning Strike. You can completely get rid of all the legendary resistances for the creature in one turn, which normally would take another group a lot longer and would take a lot more than just a few key points to do that. So again, all of these different things are ways that you can affect the action economy. You can affect how the fight goes for your party. The one thing you're not going to be doing, despite the fact that you get more attacks than like fighters and paladins and stuff like that until they get pretty high level, you don't do a ton of damage. You really don't. Because you don't use magic weapons, you don't get some of the really cool benefits of magic weapons. You don't have any real spells that add on extra damage like hunters and and paladins and warlocks and things like that, where they have hex and hunter's mark and stuff like that. And your overall damage itself is not massively high. It's not because you're also not able to use abilities like sharpshooter. You're not available to use abilities or able to use abilities like Great Weapon Master, where you can take -5 from your attack roll and then add an extra 10 damage. Stuff like that you can't do like a barbarian or a fighter or a ranger. So your overall damage output, you're never going to be able to compete with these other guys. And I've seen a lot of people thinking, wow, I'm a monk, I have 4 attacks, and I can do a D10 with each attack. They think that they're going to be able to do this amazing stuff and be able to out damage fighters or rangers or paladins and things like that. You're simply not. And that's where a lot of people get tripped up on the monk, is focusing on, look at all the attacks that I can do, or always spending your key points on Flurry of Blows and ignoring things like Patient Defense or Step of the Wind, or forgetting the fact that you have reactions that you can use, or not using Stunning Strike because it burns a key point that you could be using to get an extra attack. Your attacks are significantly more useful as a way to invoke status ailments and a way to change the battlefield than they are as doing damage. And I actually get in trouble at the table because a lot of times I will roll my attack roll and I'll do Stunning Strike. I'll actually forget to roll the damage because I'm so less focused on actually doing damage that I forget that these attacks even do damage. They do help. I mean, again, if you do 40-10 plus, if you have an 18 dexterity, like my monk right now is 18 dexterity, 20 wisdom, and he's 16. And he does it, so he does a D8 of damage. So 4d8 plus 16 is a fairly high amount of damage, and I can do that by just burning 1 key point. So it seems like a pretty high amount, but when you compare it to like a fighter that's using a great axe and can add on Great Weapon Master to his attacks, or a ranger that's using sharpshooter and hunter's mark, or a rogue that can add on sneak attack and can crit on sneak attacks and stuff like that, you're never going to be able to out damage people with the monk. That's not what it's designed to do. What you can do is things like, you stun the bad guy, your rogue now has advantage on all their attacks. They have that much better chance of, first of all, they always get their sneak attack damage because they have advantage, and they have that much better chance of getting a crit, which for sneak attack is insane. Rogues that crit on their sneak attack do hundreds of damage in a single blow, or giving your fighter or barbarian automatic advantage lets them be able to use that Great Weapon Master, or giving your ranger or just ranged, a bow user, the ability to use sharpshooter, and because they have advantage, they don't have to worry as much about not hitting the target. They can just sharpshooter and add an additional 20 or 30 damage to their attack, especially once rangers get something like Swift Quiver, which allows them to make 4 attacks with a bow in a single turn. Your ability to give them advantage so that they can add on that sharpshooter damage becomes incredible. And then also having Hex or Hunter's Mark and stuff like that, like, you are going to help your team do more damage. They're going to do more damage because of you, but you're not going to be the damage dealer. That's just how it is. So that was my very, very comprehensive guide to monks in general. Like I said, I will probably do another video where I talk about the subtypes. And then if this is something that you guys are interested in, I will actually go through mechanically every one of the classes and talk about, this is what the class was designed mechanically to do. This is what's going to make sure that you're doing the most useful things with this class. You're going to be able to have the most fun with this class and feel the most useful using this class in that particular instance. So anyway, that's all for me today. Like I said at the beginning of the video, YouTube changed their partner program. In order to do it, I need 1,000 subscribers and I need 4,000 hours of content viewed by February 20th. Team Human and the Critters and the Thumpers have been really, really great. They've been subscribed to my channel in droves. But the subscriptions have started to level off, and I actually had my first negative subscription day today. The first time I've seen myself actually lose subscribers since I started doing this. So I need more subscribers. I need more people watching my content. I'm going to be putting out just tons of it, as much as I can. But I do need your guys' help. If you are watching this, please share this video, share it on Reddit. Share it anywhere you think people will really enjoy something like this about D&D specifically. Share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it in, D&D groups and stuff like that. And please ask people if they can to subscribe. Because again, if I don't hit that 1,000 subscriber goal, and if I don't hit that 4,000 hours viewed, I'm losing my partnership status. And I have not made enough money yet to get a payout. And so the money that I have earned, which I'm not going to put a figure on, but it's less than $100 because that's the first payout. All that money disappears, and YouTube hasn't said where it goes. So I would like the ability to get the money that I have earned from this. And the only way that's going to happen is if I can continue being a partner and make enough money to get my first payout. So please, 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 please. I know you hear this all the time, but it is extremely important for this channel specifically. I need you to share this video in as many places as you can. Ask people you know, hey, this is a really cool guy. He's trying to continue on YouTube. YouTube is making it harder for him, and he's not giving up without a fight. So please subscribe to his content, even if you're only going to watch for until February 20th and you never watch my content again. Please, please, please subscribe to the channel. I need raw numbers. Please turn this stuff on, and while you're doing other stuff on your computers, most of the stuff I do, you don't have to see my ugly mug. So just keep it in the background as background noise, and you can kind of glean information from it that way. All that stuff helps. All that stuff is what's going to make it so that I can actually continue doing this YouTube thing. So, yeah, that's all for me today. I will see you guys next time, all right? Bye-bye.